In this video, we're going to learn how to start the F-4 Phantom for DCS World by Heatblur. Hey everyone, welcome aboard the F-4 Phantom from Heatblur for DCS World. And today we're going to learn how to start the engine the Casmo way, meaning we're not going to kind of mess with a lot of the extraneous things that in the real world you would do, but you know, in the real world there'll also be a guy standing there and things like that. So we're just going to focus on the actual button pushes that we need to do to get the aircraft in working order. Now, one thing I'm going to suggest you do before you do anything else is obviously, you know, make sure you map your controls and all that stuff, but you need to map this. All right, so your little ability to interact with Jester. If you're not a F-14 guy, it's your first Heatblur module and you're not used to this thing, I'm moving it with my head right now. You can also move it with your thumb controller or your mini stick, whatever you're using. So on my throttle, you can look at this throttle right here. There's not a lot of buttons on it. Okay, so we're not giving a whole lot away. If you've got a Mongoose or something, you know, one of these higher end throttles that's got a mini stick. So I've devoted a button to bring up this menu, and then I can use my mini stick because I don't want to be doing this all the time. And next thing you know, I'm just, yeah. So you're going to need to have this map though. And I highly encourage you to do that early because there's a lot of things we got to do with this just to get the engine started. So we're looking out here on the left side. We're still in a pre-build right now, but there's some ladders here. This wasn't even here last time I did this. There's an electrical cart or an air cart or something over there. We've even got things in the intakes. So there's a lot of stuff that we got to do before we get started. So I'm gonna hold down that button, get rid of that menu, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Now, I do encourage you to go through the startup tutorial when you get your module, and you'll go through all the buttons to make sure that everything's in place. But you know, it's DCS. The stuff's probably where it should be. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is put on our helmet. All right, so now we got our helmet on. I'm going to go ahead and contact the ground crew, the crew chief with hand signals. I'm going to click that. And there's a couple things that we need to do, but first we need to get some external power going to this thing. We're going to connect external power. All right, so we can hear that generator coming to life. And they removed the ladder for us. That's a nice touch. They've taken out the cowling covers for us just by attaching, connecting the power. So now we're going to look over here to the right side, and we've got our generators. We need to flip them to the external mode. So I think it's a right click. No, it's a left click. All right, left click. We're going to put it to external. And now we're essentially opening up the bus, allowing that external power to come into the aircraft. It's going to power up all these systems for us. All right, so before we get started with the next couple steps, there are a couple things that we need to understand. We're going to start the ignition process with these switches, but there are actually two buttons on this throttle per engine that we need to worry about. We're going to take a look at the mapping, and that way you guys know, because what you're going to have to do is essentially press and hold one button that's on the back side of the throttle, and then use another button to release the throttle forward. I'm moving my throttle right now. It's not moving. Okay, so there, you've got to have that other button. The book says that you're supposed to press these buttons and push the throttle forward. You don't need to do that. Okay, I'm sure in the real world you probably had to for some reason. You don't need to do that here. So we're just going to worry about these two buttons. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. All right, so here we go. We've got the right ignition and right engine idle detent. And we've got left ignition, left engine idle detent. All right, so those are the two buttons that we're going to be using to essentially start the engine. So you're definitely going to have those mapped early. You don't need to have these toggle switches because you can toggle that yourself. The other thing that we just need to be aware of is we're going to be looking over here at our RPM percentage, looking at our engine temperatures. All right, those are the two things that we're probably going to care about the most in this next step. All right, so we've got power. We're ready to rock. Let's contact our ground crew yet again. And now we need an air source. All right, so we're going to start on the right side. We're going to connect to right
Roger.
engine. He's going to talk to us.
Connected it on the right.
All right, so we are ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and tell him to start the airflow, and the wheel is going to go away. So now the airflow started. We're going to be looking over here once we get things going. All right, so there we go. So we've got the rise. We're going to go ahead and move that switch up for us. We get that 10%. I'm going to hold that ignition and move that throttle forward. And I'm going to release the ignition. I've got TGT on the rise. I'm sorry, EGT on the rise. My percentage is going to continue. So right now we just sit back and watch. All right, so the throttle moves forward. As soon as you hit that idle release, the throttle is going to automatically move forward. You don't need to actually move your physical throttle. You can if you want to, but you don't need to. All right, so we're just going to watch that engine, make sure everything spools up the way it should. Now the book says once we get to 45, we can remove the air source. I don't know if that's how they did it in real life. Realistically, I wouldn't want people kind of messing around with the engine while it's still spooling up. All right, so we're stable. I'm going to pull up my chart again, and I'm going to stop airflow.
Yep, done.
And now I'm going to connect it to the left engine.
Roger.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to come back to these generators, and we're going to click on the right side generator.
Stand by. Yes, sir. Connected on the left.
Now again, the book is going to tell you to do some other stuff. Let me get rid of the screen. The book's going to tell you to do some other stuff to make sure all these things are in the right spot. Yeah, that's great. In real world, 100% you'd be doing that, okay? We'd also be doing some control checks and making sure that spoilers and flaps and all these things are happening. It's DCS. We're going to be okay. So I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to get the engine started. We're going to move on from there. All right, so he is connected to the left engine. Now I'm going to start my airflow once again. I'm going to flick that switch.
And done.
For my left side. Got my hands off the throttle on my buttons. All right, I'm watching that. It's the 10%. And I'm going to hit the igniter. I'm going to hit that throttle detent release. I've got a rise in TGT. I'm going to release the igniter. And I'm going to continue to watch those engines. Now, I believe you can map the controls for the ground crew as far as starting the air, removing the air. You could do that as well. I'm pretty sure that's in there. But it's probably a waste of buttons. And you can just use the wheel here. All right, so we're going to stop the airflow.
Yep, I'm done.
And I'm going to have them disconnect.
Roger.
Get rid of that. And once again, I'm going to bring our generator online.
And we're disconnected.
If you're ready with the generators, I can start the alignment.
All right, so we've got generators on. Jester's asking for alignment. We can just click on that. We can tell him,
Roger.
Yeah. Now, what I was looking for...
What target alignment do you want?
Well, of course, as soon as I'm talking. We'll just do a full alignment there, Jester, and stop interrupting me. Shut up back there. All right, so we've got these lights here. You saw that DC bus tie. If that stays on, reset the right generator. Just turn it off, turn it back on, and just make sure all those lights are out. All right, so we can take a look over here and just see that there's a few lights letting us know that some things need to be addressed. One is, of course, the canopy. Now, real world, from what I understand from real F-4 crew, they left this open for as long as possible. For one, I guess it actually activated the ejection seat safety, essentially. So the safety is engaged while the canopy is open. At least that's my understanding. The other is just, of course, airflow and comfort. So we'll leave it up until we get to the runway, and then we'll close it up as we're entering the runway. But we'll work our way around from the left. We're going to go ahead and turn on our stability systems here. And if we needed to set our VOR, we could go ahead and set that now. Go ahead and continue up. All right, so right here, this is for our static. We're going to reset our static. If you don't do that, one, the light won't go out, but two, you won't be able to take the altimeter out of standby mode. Okay, so if you're ever having trouble, we'll get there in a second, but if you're ever having trouble and it stays in standby, you need to flip that switch. All right, continuing up left, anti-skid, we'll bring that on. Here's our taxi and takeoff lights. We could set up our weapons if we were heading out to the range or heading out to do good work. All right, continuing to come around to the right. Like I said, we need to reset the altimeter. And since we've reset the static, we're good with that. Go ahead and set this. All we do is click it and the flag will go away. We can set our HUD to cage, air to air, air to ground, whatever you want to set. We'll talk about that again in later videos. So our master caution light is still lit up. We can test our fire lights right there. But that master caution has a reset. It's right down here. Go ahead and click that. Make sure that goes out. If it came back on, that would tell us that there's some other problem. Of course, as we talked about, we've got the canopy light. If we come down here, we can check our TACAN, make sure that's tuned in the way that we want it to. I'll go ahead and set it to transmit and receive. Down here, I'm going to set my radios to transmit, receive, and guard. We can change our frequencies that we need to hear based on our presets. All right, continuing down our IFF panel, we've already addressed our generators. Lights, these cockpits do get a little dark, so you might want to set your console lights and instrument lights depending what you want to do. Way back here is our external lights, fuselage lights, our anti-collision lights, our position lights. So we'll leave all those alone. We can make adjustments to our seat height here with this switch. I'm pretty tall, so I'm going to drop it down. And then work our way back up the center panel if we need to. We can turn on our scope, our radar repeater. And since we were talking about our TACAN, we can set it here and tune in that TACAN. And once we get airborne, we'll get better data. We'll get some mileage from that TACAN. We'll talk about navigation in a future video. I'm still working through it myself. But right now, we're just kind of waiting on the alignment process to complete.
Alignment completed. Go primary sync now. Ready to taxi.
All right, alignment complete, and we'll know it not only because he tells us, but also we'll start to see some life here in these lights. They'll start lighting up and doing all their beeps and boops. I have not personally figured out what half of this means yet, but I know that it tells me we're good to go. And once we get that, we will know that it is time to call the ground crew and remove the wheel chocks.
Roger. Wheel chocks out.
All right, we've still got our canopy.
Have a safe flight. Disconnecting.
And real quick, Cosmo from the editing floor. One thing I did not know at the time when I made this video is we need to toggle this switch right here. This toggles between the inertial navigation system and the AN/AGB7 displacement gyroscope, and this gives attitude information. So when we set it to primary, the INS takes over and provides azimuth and attitude information to the ADI, and when it's in standby, the AN/AGB7 provides that data. So make sure you flip that before you start moving. All right, so our canopy is still open. Let's not forget that. We're going to go ahead and continue forward. We do have a pinky switch for the nose wheel steering right there. We do have to hold it in. It's not an on-off. So we're going to give it some juice, test our brakes, give it a little bit more juice, and get her going. We'll go ahead and hold that switch. Now, as we taxi out, Jester might say annoying stuff.
Time to fly.
As if I didn't expect that to happen. And then we're going to continue forward. And at some point, he'll probably ask us if we're planning to do any low-level flying.
So, we going to be picking up a few bug guts on this flight? What do you think?
And I understand that this is actually setting his threshold for ejection.
You okay?
I'll tell him that, and he's got everything set up for high altitude. All right, this thing will continue to taxi pretty fast. I've been at idle for quite some time. It likes to taxi fast, at least when you're light. All right, so we're getting up close here. I'm gonna go ahead and close the canopy. Flaps are set. Let's go ahead and flip on our mirror so we can look at ourselves and look cool. Take the runway. Obviously, lighting, I've not even addressed, taxiing out.
Canopy
Turn
down
on
and
your
locked.
taxi.
Lights out and stripes aligned.
Turning on your taxi lights, your position lights, all that good pilot stuff that we're not going to worry about because we're playing a video game and we're going to get lined up. And before we take off, we want to make sure that the radar missile power switch is set up to CW on. This powers the Sparrow's tuning drive and sets it to the correct continuous wave carrier frequency for this aircraft. Again, you only need to do this if you actually have Sparrows on board. Now, what we're going to do is bring up the throttle to about 85%, holding the brakes. We'll release the brakes, continue forward. She's going to hit 80 knots very fast. And at that point, we're going to bring the stick back. And while we're talking about that, let's go ahead and make sure that we set our trim to about 3. nose down. Once we start pulling that stick back, the nose will eventually jump up. We just maintain control of that and let the aircraft climb. All right, so we're going to continue power adjuster. It's going to give us some call outs as we go. There's 85 release. We're going to full burner.
Engine's good. Airspeed off the peg.
Maintain lane alignment. There's 80.
100 knots.
Pulling back on the stick.
I feel like flying.
See how fast it gets from 80 to 100. All right, we're airborne. Gears coming up.
Gears moving.
Flaps are coming up. And especially when she's light, climbs like a bat out of hell. Making some slight trim adjustments there. And continue on. We're already passing 3,000 feet. All right, well, hopefully you learned something. Hopefully this helps you get up in the air fast. Of course, you can always just spawn as a hot start, but it is kind of fun to start it up. Waiting for the alignment kind of sucks, but everything else is fairly quick. Hope you guys are enjoying this module. A big thanks to HeatBlur for letting me have early access so I can work on some of these videos and help you guys get up in the air faster. A big thanks as always to Patreon and YouTube members for keeping the lights on. Very much appreciated. It's time to get back to work, making some more videos. We'll talk to you guys later. Take it easy.